Okay, everybody, we know we've got a few folks that are going to be straggling in here, but I want to go ahead and get started because we do have some housekeeping stuff before we get going. Welcome to all of our friends. Kristen, I see you there online. Thanks for being here today. We're going to do a quick introduction around the room. We have some new folks that were able to join us on that first meeting in Saturday, and we're very excited to have them. And we're also very excited to have some folks with us today that are representing our transit agencies here in Fresno. So again, my name is Kendall Flint. I'm the project manager for the Measure C renewal effort on behalf of the Fresno Council of Governments. And my role here is basically to facilitate the discussion today and hopefully get you guys some good information so you can ask questions of our lovely panelists that are joining us today. And I'd like to go around the room and again, just quickly, if you could tell us your name and the city and or agency that you represent. Wendy, why don't we start with you? By the way, I want to point out that Wendy is going to be posting information about these meetings and the process on her social media channels. We encourage you all to do that because you have a great opportunity to share what you're learning here with other folks. So Wendy, go right ahead and be sure to turn your microphone on so that our home audience can enjoy it as well.
Wendy Osborne, representing the city of Firebaugh. And I did get a couple of thumbs up when I did my initial post, so I did get a little bit of engagement.
Lino Mendez from the city of Fowler. I haven't done the media post yet, so.
Okay.
Sarah Montemayor with the Greater Reedley Chamber of Commerce. I do the marketing events out there, and I have not had a chance to post yet. This is my first meeting.
Yay. Try to speak loudly, folks. Not yelling at each other, right? But just a forceful, happy tone. Okay, Chuck.
Hi, I'm Chuck Yaden from the big city of Coalinga. Here to make a difference, good or bad. There'll be a difference when I leave.
Hi, my name is Mia Moreno. I'm here representing the city of Parlier.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Greg Garcia, and I'm representing the city of Selma.
Good afternoon. I'm Tina Sumner, and I'm the advocacy director for the Fresno Cycling Club, and I'm representing active transportation.
Hi, I'm Mark Kepler. I'm with Tree Fresno, and I guess I'm representing the environmental focus.
Hello, my name is Alexander Naranjo, and I'm here representing Fuerza.
Joseph Amador, City of Mendota. Thank you.
Lee Dulap, representing the county of Fresno. Good afternoon.
Hi, my name's Scott Miller. I am here representing the Fresno City County Chamber of Commerce.
And
Gail
welcome.
Miller.
Welcome, Scott.
No relation. It's nice.
Oh, I didn't realize I put you together.
Yeah.
Oh, that could start some rumors.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I represent Measure C Citizens Oversight Committee.
Jen Guerra, representing the city of Keensburg, and I did was able to put some stuff on social media, got some positive stuff back, and also my Cultural Arts Rotary Club wants someone to come and talk about Measure C.
Let's connect after this meeting today. Okay, Kristen, let's go ahead and have you unmute and say hello to everybody.
Hi, I'm Crystal Garten. I'm representing the Building Industry Association of Fresno Madera Counties, and I'm standing in for Darren Rose today, as he couldn't make it. So I'm happy to be here with you all.
Thanks so much. Do we have any other folks online with us today from the steering committee? Okay, well, very quickly then, we have a number of staff members representing FCOG at FCTA. We'll be hearing from Moses in just a moment. We have Terry Ogle, the Executive Director of the Fresno County Transportation Authority. And we have Robert Phipps, who's the Executive Director of the Fresno Council of Governments. And I think the other folks we're going to meet in just a moment as they come up. I did want to remind, especially our new folks, when you come to these meetings, there's a nifty parking garage underneath the building. And what you want to do is park under there. And who's got one of the green? You have these lovely gifts that you get when you come in. And if you bring this up, then our staff will be giving you a validation on that, so you won't have to pay on the way out. And again, the bathrooms keys are hanging right there in the back of the room next to the lovely plant. You have to go down the little hallway. And it's a windy thing, but I promise you will get there eventually. Use the key and then come on back. So today's meeting is really focused on transit. As you may recall, this committee is going to meet every month. and we're going to be talking about different segments of things that Measure C funds go towards. And the hope is that after we finish all 5 of our little segments and we come back to October and November, we'll have a clearer idea of how this group, based on what you hear, would like to see that go forward. So in talking about transit, a couple things I want to make you aware of just at the get-go. Here in Fresno County, we have about a little over 23,000, almost 23.5 thousand households that do not have a vehicle. And the reason that that's important to note is because those people predominantly are going to be very dependent on transit. And so to put that in perspective, we have about 500,000 households here, right? So it's not a small number. We've also got approximately 144,000 people that are over 65. I'm there soon. And we have another 94,000 that are in some way wheelchair bound or other disabilities. A lot of these folks rely heavily on transit. I want you to keep that in mind. Also, I want you to keep in mind is how transit is funded. This is a really complicated thing, and we're going to be sending you links to give you more information so you can look at it at your leisure. But local transit services in California come like with different pots of money. The federal government, the state, and then we have regional and local money. And then there's something called Transportation Development Act funds, TDA funds. All of those funding sources together are still not enough money to make it actually balance out. So transit as a service is always what we call subsidized. And our speakers today will give you a little more information about what that means and how that affects the ability to deliver those services and to continue to deliver them. What's interesting is that counties in California that do not have a self-help sales tax do not have measure funds to apply to that, right? And what you're going to see today is there's a substantial amount of money that comes from Measure C that flows through to the 3 agencies that'll be talking with us today. And that's the City of Fresno through Fresno Fax Express, the City of Clovis, and then here the Fresno County Fresno County Rural Transit Authority. Yes, Moses will tell us all about that. Agency, sorry. So as I mentioned, federal transit funds, these are in the form of grants and other types of things, capital investments, et cetera. Something called congestion mitigation and air quality. These are grants that come basically from agencies at the federal level that are intended to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, right? So the idea is that if we put people on buses, they're not driving cars, so that those grants are available. And then there's discretionary programs, which means those can be allocated congressionally or otherwise every year through build or infra. These are a lot of acronyms and a lot of fun stuff. The thing to keep in mind with those federal grants and the state grants is they usually require some sort of matching fund. And so Measure C, remember last time we talked about the idea of these leverage funds. So we had $2.1 billion in Measure C funds that came in. We got another $8 billion in these grants and other leverage funds. These are some of the ways that we can do that. On the state, we have state transit assistance. We have transit and intercity rail. I want to be very clear, that's not high-speed rail that we're talking about. We're talking about local intercity rail and low carbon transit operations. Same kind of thing as with the CMAQ programs. And they have other things called STIP. I don't know who came up with all these acronyms. We're going to try not to use them, but I think that they did it on purpose to keep us confused. Then we also have local transportation funds, state transit assistance. This is the thing I really want you to look at. Most importantly, since we're looking at the finances from 86 forward, you can see about $21 million that went into transit funding just during that one period of time in a year. And overall to date, you see this is about 2.5 million, 2.2 million. You can see how this plays out. In our case, we see about 13% of the transit money going to fax, about almost 2% going to Clovis Transit, and about 4% to Fresno County Rural Transit. There are other programs underneath here that we're not going to get into today, but we are going to get into next month. And these are things like ADA paratransit, van pools. You may have heard of Cal vans, the vans that pick up maybe farm workers or workers and get them to where they need to go. And there's other programs that'll be out there. But today we're really going to focus specifically on transit, which is the traditional, bus stops, things like that. So right now, on our users in the county, about 80%, as I mentioned, are entirely dependent on public transit. So it's the only way they have to get around. So they're using it to go to school, to go to doctor's appointments, to go to the grocery store, whatever else that might look like. I also wanted to give you, for comparison standpoint, before we get into the presentations, how other agencies are doing this. So Fresno County is different than, say, Madera County or others that have less population. This is a much more populous. Fresno is the fifth most populous city in the state of California. So just for your edification, we look to compare kind of similar areas. You can see what they're doing with their transit funds, with their measure money. So you kind of, see what's going on. So as an example, Sacramento County, when they get their Measure A money in, they put about 25% of it into transit. An additional 10% goes to congestion relief, but that 25% is what we would consider the traditional transit kind of things we're going to be talking about today. The San Francisco County Transportation Authority, again, San Francisco, much different than Fresno, but it does have a transit piece. They put in 22%, 22.6 of their measure money into transit. Orange County Transportation Authority, which is actually one of the first self-help counties out there, they are allocating about 25%, and that includes their Metrolink gateways, and other things that they have, as well as transit stops and things like that. So it kind of gives you a little bit of a sense about others we're doing. And as we go through this process, if there's more information you want on others, we can certainly do that. This is the snapshot of what we see here in the Valley. So Stanislaus, Modesto, again, not as populous, right? 7% is what is in their measure that passed in 2016. Measure V for Merced, they have 5%. Madera went from 3% to 4% with Measure T that was just renewed last year. Tulare is at 14%. And the current allocation here in Fresno County is 24%. But of that, about 3-4% is for those other programs, right? So it's really right now about 19%. So that's of all the Measure C money comes in, that's the amount of money that's going to transit in the overall 100%. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. Before I introduce our speakers from Fresno Area Express, does anybody have any questions about what I just kind of went through right now? Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. Well, I'd like to welcome from Fresno Area Express. Of course, I don't have my agenda in front of me. Can I steal yours? Yes. Thank you. Joe Vargas. Joe is going, I want to say special kudos because I have a feeling you were at the mayor's State of the City today, right?
I was, and I made
Yeah.
sure I didn't eat too much so I could be alert here.
So Joe, if you can give the folks just kind of an overview of, what FACTS is, all that kind of good stuff, and then he's going to walk you through how they're using Measure C money and what kind of impact that has. Again, keeping in mind, as we've said over and over, if Measure C does not pass, the funds that flow through to these agencies go away. So keep that in your mind as you're hearing these folks tell you what's happening. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Joe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kendall.
I'll move your slides for you. You just go me.
Okay, will do. Thank you, everybody. I'm Joe Vargas, Assistant Director with the City of Fresno's Department of Transportation, or as we're better known, Fresno Area Express, or FACTS. Thank you for having me today. Again, anytime I get a chance to come up and talk about how important Measure C is, like I did in the last round that we tried to get it passed, I'm happy to do so. I was actually hired, a little background about myself, I was actually hired in March of 2006. So right before this current initiative went to the vote. So I had a little bit of experience under the original measure, which was not dedicating any funding to public transit. And I think at the time Kendall just showed that we're receiving currently over $15 million. At that time, the city was shifting about $2 million a year to us. So definitely a significant difference having this dedicated source of local funds, unrestricted funds available to us to provide service. So with that, I'm just going to go to, Kendall, if we can go to the next slide, actually 2 slides. One more. A little bit about us, in case you're not familiar with us. Again, we're Fresno Area Express. We provide, excuse me, I got to get used to these glasses. I'm nearsighted, but I'm trying to see that thing, that screen over there. We're Fresno Area Express. We're a department of the city of Fresno, so we're not a standalone agency like many are across the state. We report to the city manager and the mayor, and then our board, which is the city council. We provide transit to the Fresno metropolitan area. We offer 18 different routes throughout the city of Fresno. And And we do offer a bus rapid transit line, which is Blackstone and Cesar Chavez now, which is our biggest contributor to our ridership. It does about 20% of our ridership. So that's huge for us. We also have our Handy Ride paratransit service for our disabled community, and our customers have to get certified to use that system. But both systems are available 7 days a week, 363 days a year, or about 7 days a week, a couple of weeks. We don't offer service on Thanksgiving and Christmas, but otherwise you will see some level of service out there throughout the entirety of the year. Our service is run with 138 40-foot buses on the fixed route side, and then on the paratransit side, you'll see the smaller cutaways, and we have about 50 of those that are used for that service. Our department consists of over 500 employees, with about 350 of those being operators. Again, you can't run 18 routes without bus drivers. So that's what makes up the majority of our employees. Last fiscal year, to give you an idea of how productive our system is, in FY 2024, we had 9.6 million in ridership. Obviously, that took a hit during the pandemic, where we dropped about 50% in 2020 as we were, dealing with social distancing and all the restrictions that were out there. But we maintained all our service out there for the public, and fortunately, last year we got to over 9 million, and then this year we're projected to do 10.2 million in ridership, which is back to pre-pandemic levels, which is just indicates that that's how vital it is to the community, to the disadvantaged folks that we provide service to. So we're very fortunate in that our ridership is back to pre-pandemic levels. Again, many agencies across the state are still struggling. They're struggling financially. They're struggling to recover their ridership. And much of that is due to, again, cuts in service and increases in fares. So again, for us, we kind of did the opposite. We kept all service out there during the pandemic. We even added a little bit of service. And I'm looking at Jeff Long over here, our planner, who was a part of that. We added some service, and then we reduced fares to try and encourage folks to get back into the system. So again, I think those decisions we made got us back to pre-pandemic levels in terms of ridership. Next slide. This next slide shows our system map for fixed route, and also the coverage area for our paratransit service. As you can see on the fixed route system map, we have a ton of coverage. So we cover basically 110 out of 116 square miles of the city. You can see the concentration in downtown, and then as development happened, as resources for our customers got further and further away from the core of the city, we had to push our lines out. Now we still have plenty of opportunities. West of 99 is still developing. Today in the state of the city, the mayor talked about Southeast or SADA. So there's still a lot of opportunities out in that area. So again, for us, it's always about making sure that we're connecting the community to the resources they need, whether that's education or health, jobs. So whatever we can do to be able to provide them with a affordable trip. And on the paratransit side, by law, we're required to provide 3/4 of a mile service around our fixed route. Our paratransit service, again, you have to get certified to use it. We have about over 4,000 registered customers on that system. And last year we did about 130,000 trips. Next slide. So again, I mentioned that I was around for the beginning of this extension. At the beginning, and we didn't list out all of the years on here since it started, but we were receiving about $6 million in that initial year, and then we hit the financial crisis. So again, we were receiving $2 million under the original measure, and then we got $6 million or so in the first year, and it kind of flattened out throughout that financial crisis. but it allowed us to have $4 million more to be able to support our service. So again, a huge blessing for us during that time. As part of this extension under the public transit program, our FACS receives 14% of the total amount set aside for the 3 transit agencies. And this fiscal year in 25, we're projecting to receive a little bit over $15 million. So it's kind of flattened out over the last 4 years, right around 15 million. So again, it's sales tax based, so it's just dependent on what the economy is doing at the time. Next slide. So what do we do with our Measure C funds? Again, it's pretty straightforward for us. It's all about service, trying to put more service out there to get people out of their cars, try to encourage them to use something other than their vehicle. Our focus typically to expand service is going after, I think Kendall mentions CMAQ or congestion mitigation air quality grants. We go after grants to expand service or increase frequencies, meaning how often a bus shows up at any location. And then we match it with Measure C. And then after the 3 years of demonstration, which is typical for CMAQ, we then we leave it in place and we cover the expense with Measure C. In addition, again, we support some of the day service, weekend service. We provide weekend service about 12 hours on the weekends from 6:30 to about 7 p.m. And then night service, we do have 5 routes that operate all the way out to midnight. One of the things, the feedback that we receive throughout our surveys is about, I can't get home, right? Our service ends at 10 o'clock. So we made it a point to put out at least some level of service to be able to try and get folks home from their jobs or whatever they're choosing to do in the evening. Next slide, please. Again, I talked about increased frequencies. Currently, we have 4 of our routes that operate every 15 minutes or lower in the case of BRT. BRT during peak service operates at 10-minute frequencies, which is, again, BRT makes up about 20% of our ridership, or about over 2 million rides annually. Route 9 is on Shaw Avenue. 34 is on First Street, but 34, we just launched it. Again, I mentioned using CMAQ to initially implement or increase service levels. That's currently being funded by a state grant, and then we'll take it over with Measure C once that funding expires. And then 38 Cedar Avenue. Cedar Avenue is probably right up there in productivity. A lot of the schools, Roosevelt and you go north, that route is pretty jam-packed, just like BRT and the other 50-minute frequencies. Day service for us, it's starts about 5 a.m. and then goes, we consider day service up until 6 p.m., 7 p.m. Night service, I mentioned the 5 routes that go all the way out to midnight. And we're looking to expand that service, or actually increase the frequency, because it's currently only hour frequency. And for our customers staying out that late, waiting at a bus stop for, at minimum half the frequency, 30 minutes, that's quite a long time. So we're going to cut that back to 30 minutes beginning in January. And then we're going to extend, I think, Route 38 out to River Park. So hopefully we can connect some folks to that area. And then weekend service, again, I mentioned being able to provide service to those folks, to our customer base on Saturdays and Sundays. Next slide. Although this is not part of our 14%, we did partner with Fresno City College to go after some new tech, Measure C new tech funding for their new Southwest Advanced Propulsion Center, where they have curriculum and programs related to zero emission and advanced technologies in the vehicle sector. Again, for us, we feel like that's kind of a great thing to have in our backyard and for the region as the state continues to push for zero emissions and moving to this new technology. We're hoping that it serves as kind of an incubator or a pipeline for technicians to come work on our vehicles. Currently, we have 9 battery electric buses and we have 2 hydrogen buses. And I will tell you, it's been a challenge to find and train our technicians who are used to diesel and compressed natural gas. So we're hoping that our continued partnership with City College really produces some benefits going forward. Next slide. So in terms of expenses, Measure C, at least in last year and this year, makes up about or covers about 16% of our total expenditure, our operating expenses. Again, that's pretty significant for us. That's why anytime we even think about losing Measure C, it's a pretty scary thought. But again, over the years, depending on what kind of funding, and I mentioned CMAQ, we set aside some Measure C to then be able to use it in the future to cover increases in service levels. So again, you won't see the same amount spent every year. And that's mainly because, again, we try to go after and leverage Measure C to match operating grants or capital grants. And I'll get to that in just a second. Next slide. Another way we use Measure C, and I think you'll hear this from the other agencies, is to match grants. So we leverage, go after, it provides a match for our 5307 or Federal Transit Administration 5307 program that we receive annually, and that's about $2 million match. And that funds our preventative maintenance of equipment and facilities. In addition, it pays for some of our capital project management team, planning activities. FTA requires us to have a planning element to receive funding. So again, we're grateful to have Measure C because there's not a lot of flexible funding available to transit agencies. I heard TDA mentioned, and I'll get to that in a second, but TDA is probably the next most flexible money for us. But Measure C has been, again, a blessing for us to be able to have a local funding to be able to go after some larger grants. Next slide. This slide just shows kind of the different levels of matching towards grants that we used. Again, that's going to fluctuate based on the type of grants. I think there's some accounting things that go on in here related to when the drawdowns are done or when the transfers are made. So again, it's not perfect science in here, but at minimum, we use $2 million annually to match at least our $12 million federal 5307 grant. Next slide. So we talked about Transportation Development Act. So LTF, Local Transportation Fund, and STA, State Transportation Assistance. We receive, I think our last claim was maybe right around $28 million was our last claim. Part of the state's requirement to receive that funding is to be able to recover at least 20% from your fare box. Now, I can tell you that $1 a fare, $1 per ride, 50 cents for a reduced ride, and all the free service that we provide for children 12 and under, veterans, disabled on our fixed route isn't getting us to 20%. So to get to that number, we have to plug in some level of Measure C to get to that 20%. Now, currently that's been suspended by the state. And they're working through trying to figure out how they're going to monitor in terms of performance metrics. But again, without Measure C before the suspension of that requirement, there's really no way that we would have met 20%. So having this be able to count towards that calculation has been huge. And again, if you don't meet that 20%, you're in jeopardy of losing some of that funding. So next slide. And here's kind of when we had to start using Measure C. So right around 2017 is when, the calculation is is passenger fares divided by total operating funds received. So our operating funds received started getting higher, and therefore we had to start supplementing it with Measure C. Again, this is not an amount that we pay to anybody. It just goes into the calculation to make sure you meet that metric. So currently if that 20% was in place and in effect, we would have to apply $11 million towards meeting that metric. Next slide. This is my last slide. Again, it's pretty straightforward for us. We're going to continue to use Measure C to provide a high level of service to the community that we serve, continue to support all the different types of service that we have out there, knowing that the folks that we serve are mainly from the disadvantaged community. I think in our last passenger survey, I think the average weight, the annual amount made by our passengers was 10,000 a year. So again, it's critical that we are able to be out there and connect them to opportunities for jobs, get them to their healthcare appointments, be available to provide them the freedom to access resources that, some of us with cars probably take for granted. Now, life without Measure C, well, I don't want to know the day without Measure C. I think that we felt a lot of pain, I think, during the financial crisis, and I think I'm traumatized because that was one of my first years with the department. But it would look probably very similar. We'd have to be reducing service, make cuts. We'd have to increase fares, programs that we have out there for youth and for our seniors and our veterans, those would have to be relooked at. So again, $15 million is $15 million for us. I mean, it's probably the equivalent of 5 or 6 routes based on what it costs us to operate. So again, super critical funding for us, and every year appreciative of having it available to us. And again, there's not a lot of flexible money for us in transit. We go after a lot of heavily restricted funds. Some of them can be used for operating, but the majority, we used to say when I worked in budget and financials with the department, we're capital rich and operating poor. And again, Measure C provides us that resource and that investment from our community to be able to provide high levels of service. So with that concludes my presentation. I'm thinking we're waiting until the end for questions.
Yeah, I think if that's okay with everybody, we can hear all through, because there's going to be questions. I think they're going to apply to all of the folks speaking today. But Joe, thank you very much for hanging out. I'm going to pause this just for a second so I can get on the Zoom. And I think we've got some of our panelists that need to be moved over. Give me just a second here. If I can do it. And I don't know if I can. Let's see here. This is strictly operator error. That. Okay, we'll go on from here while I try to figure this out. Stop share, sorry. Oh, here we go. Pardon me. Give me 1 second to take a look at my participants. Okay, Blake, Brad, Brian, Karen. Okay, Karen's going to be moved up to panelist. Give me 1 second here. Mark, I'm moving you over right now. I think that is it for my folks. Yes. Okay, thank you for your patience, everybody.
Thank you.
It's always fun. Let me get up to where we are here. Sorry. Okay. I'm going to claim lack of sleep from the alarm going off at the DoubleTree last night at 4 a.m. for an hour. Good times.
Hold on 1 second. She's gonna turn my camera on.
Please mute everybody. Okay, with us now is Susanna Herrera from Clovis Transits. You ready?
My PowerPoint?
Yep, I've got your PowerPoint. I'll move it for you.
Okay.
Oh, you're not seeing it, are you? Hold on.
I'm not seeing it. That's why I was asking.
Hold on. Okay.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Susanna Herrera. I am a management analyst with the City of Clovis under the Clovis Transit Division. We, similar to FACS, operate a similar transit system where it's all in-house. We don't contract any of our services out. And so I'm going to go over a little bit of who we are. You can go to the next slide. And that's a lot smaller than what I thought originally. Thought I was going to be able to see it when I spoke, so I don't have all of it in front of me.
A printout?
Yes.
Yeah.
If I can have a printout. Thank you. Yeah, I think I need those because I'm like, okay, I'll do the best I can with what I got here. So we've been servicing Clovis, Fresno, and Tarpey area since 1979. We provide both fixed route and paratransit services. We have an approximate population of about 126,000 people. And our sphere of influence, so not only do we service the city of Clovis, but we service our sphere of influence, which goes beyond our city boundaries and extends out to about 35.79 square miles. That encompasses, exterior borderline of Clovis and some areas into Fresno. And of course, we are able to provide both services for free with the support of Measure C. So that's huge. That's why Measure C is so important for Clovis Transit. For next slide. And how we are funded. So Joe talked about TDA, and that's predominantly the city of Clovis has been fortunate enough to be able to provide the service without needing to go to federal funds up to recently. So since the beginning, when we provided the service from 1979 to now, we've been able to fund it through the Transportation Development Act, the TDA, through the LTF and STA funds, and is also in support with Measure C. We utilize Measure C to support us in meeting the 55% requirement local match, along with the fare box recovery ratio that Joe mentioned earlier. That allows us to continue to provide our service all in-house and provide it for free for our community. And that's major because, like Joe mentioned, we have a lot of people. Clovis has a strong pull for the elderly population. On a monthly basis, we are providing about 10,000 rides to in paratransit. So that's our elderly and disabled population. We bring them in as far as downtown Fresno. We have a large area. We go well beyond our 3/4 of a mile requirement. And Measure C is a major component of why we're able to provide that. And until recently, we were able to run our service without needing federal funding. However, given that we're not certain on Measure C funds and we want to continue to provide the service, we have moved forward in becoming a recipient of federal funds. And in 2025, we will begin drawing down funds in order to support our operational costs and future expansions that we're doing to our service. Okay, next slide, please. Oh, too fast. So as I mentioned earlier, Measure C fund supports our operational cost. It supports our 20% requirement with the ratio. It allows us to provide free services to our community and go well beyond, like I mentioned, the 3/4 of a mile, as well as we provide service in Clovis, Fresno, and Tarpey village area.
And then in addition to that, Measure C allows us to apply for additional funds for additional projects that may come up that we are looking to implement with Clovis Transit. Our next slide, please. And so this is just a little tidbit on the amount of funding we've received in the since 2007 to 24. We've received over $26 million from Measure C, and we've been able to provide 3,700,000. Sorry, I can't see the whole number, but over 3.7 million rides to passengers throughout Fresno County. And we've been able to implement 5 very essential projects for Clovis Transit. And I'm going to go into the projects now. So our first project is our electric bus pilot project. Through Measure C, we were able to receive over $407,000 to implement this particular project. As you are aware, in California, we need to go to zero emission vehicles. And so this was one of the pilot projects Clovis Transit decided to move forward in an effort to determine how a small transit agency would be able to implement zero emission vehicles into their fleet. We were able to utilize the funding from Measure C to pay for the infrastructure cost, pay for for 2 chargers and for 2 vehicles that size, because that's the vehicle size that we run is called a cutaway. We don't run the large buses. We're a small transit agency. And so we were able to purchase 2 of those vehicles, and they are currently being run on our fixed route. We've been able to learn quite a bit from this program, and predominantly our community enjoys riding them. They're quiet, they're smooth, but it also spoke to the deficiency in the zero emission technology. It's not quite there yet. And so it has some impacts on our availability to be able to provide service, reliably and consistent for our passengers. And we need to ensure we can provide the service because they rely on our transportation services to get to medical appointments, to get to college, to attend work. So those are all essential, needs in the community. Our next. The next project here is is through the new technology Measure C funding available. It's the Intelligent Technology project. We were able to be awarded $425,000 to implement a new software system into our vehicles. And so that's what you see on the screen. You see the tablets that are equipped into our vehicles for our bus drivers to log on. That allows the system to track the vehicle and provide, real-time data to our riders through trip planning tools on the website and on a rider app. And that's what you're seeing. And then we're also able to track how many vehicles or how many riders are utilizing our service. Next. The other Measure C funding available is the transit-oriented development. And one of the projects we applied for was for the Peach bus stop at DSS at the new location. And we were able to receive $200,000 for this particular project. However, we came under budget and we were able to only utilize $93,000 to be able to install these 3 bus shelters at this location. All 3 providers in the area are able to come through here, FACS, FCRTA, and Clovis Transit. And we're able to, either allow the individual to go to DSS or connect to another transit provider. Next, please. And then one of the major projects that impacted us recently is our new Landmark Square Commons Transit Center. We are very fortunate in that the city was able to afford to be able to build this new center, which allows our administrative staff to be there. It also serves as a transit hub where our vehicles drive through here and are able to have our passengers go into our waiting area. There's a waiting area there. There's access to restrooms and water, and keep them out of the heat if they need to. And then we also have a large, you'll see on the next slide, a large bus shelter that coincides. So this particular project was a two-phase project. A component was for the actual transit building and the trail. And then the other, the phase 2 was the actual bus shelter. We wanted it to be off of the streets. This is one of, actually our first one that's not actually on a street. All our bus shelters are on a main street. This particular one, it's inside the square, the landmark square, they call it, but basically making it a transit hub for our community to, safely on board or off board. And if they need to go inside or need information on transit services, they're able to do so because they're able to just cross over and go into the building. And we have our dispatchers and our admin staff there to support them. So what happens if Measure C goes away? Well, if Measure C goes away, we would have to minimize our service hours. Right now, as we provide paratransit service Monday through Friday from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. And then we provide fixed route service 6 days a week from Monday through Friday, 6:15 to 6:45. And then on Saturdays from 7:30 to 3:30. So quite a bit, our service would need to be cut back. Our riders will be required to start paying for transit services. Like I mentioned earlier, all our services are free. And then we would also need to cut back, more than likely, we would have to cut back our service area. Like I mentioned, we go well into Fresno, and to be able to take our passengers for their medical appointments, there's quite a bit of medical services that they seek in Fresno. And so we would have to cut back on that service area for our paratransit service. And then last but not least, as Joe mentioned, we use Measure C because it is flexible funds that allows us to meet local match requirements for other funding that's available. If we don't have Measure C, then you don't have that flexible spending. And most projects or most funding sources out there are very competitive. And in order for you to, essentially win the award, you have to be able to meet anywhere between 12 to 20% local match. But if you really want to be competitive, it has to be more than 20%. And so if we don't have Measure C funds, then it really puts us in a difficult position. So I've included my contact information if you guys want to reach out. And thank you for your time.
Thank you for being here today. Thank you. Now I'm going to ask Moses to come up and regale us with his presentation. We've got two more. They'll go relatively briefly, and then we'll have a little break and come back and have discussion and questions with everybody, okay? It's all yours, Moses.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, and my pleasure to be here today to present to you on FCRTA, Fresno County Rural Transit Agency. Briefly, just a bit of my background. I came a little before Joe. I started my transportation career in 1985, 1 year before the first measure, probably before some of you were born. But at any rate, I worked for a community-based organization here in Fresno County. I also worked with Caltrans, state of California, and also the California Public Utilities Commission, Rail Crossing Engineering Section. And the last 14 years I've spent with Fresno County Rural Transit Agency. You can see here by this map, and I apologize for the size of it, but if you want to get up and take a look at this slide, it's a really critical slide because it's a diagnostic view of all of our routes, mainly the fixed routes that are intercity routes. We break down our routes by two service categories. I can barely see it, Mark, too, so believe me. But feel free to get up and look at it because it's very important and critical. We cover approximately 6,000 square miles in Fresno County, and with a population of just under 400,000. So there's a lot of roadway activity, a lot of cities to cover, and we try to do the best we can. Not a perfect system, but a good faith effort at best. And if you take a look at this map, those intercity routes are very critical. And I'm just going to give you just kind of a high level factor of the importance and priority of these intercity routes. There are 13 incorporated cities within Fresno County, excluding the city of Clovis and the city of Fresno. And those 13 cities are well served with intracity routes. Yes, inter, galactic and all that stuff. But the intra-city routes, depending on the population, may have anywhere from 2 to 4 vehicles. Demand response, commonly known as or referred to as paratransit, dial-a-ride. But it's real-time dispatching. If you live in any one of those cities, 13 incorporated cities, you can actually call an 800 number for free from any of those cities, get a live person, not a voicemail, not anything else. But here in Selma, that's where our dispatch center is, and you can actually get a ride. It's real-time dispatching. Very critical, especially with an aging population, individuals with disabilities, limited access to services, they can call and get a ride within those cities. The 3 major cities, obviously, are Sanger, Reedley, and Selma, with populations of approximately 25,000. And that's really important to note because you address the service level based on the need and the population. And obviously, the greater the population, the greater the need. And especially, and you heard from the 2 other presenters today, we deal with a lot of transit-dependent individuals. Yes, in the urbanized areas of Clovis and Fresno, but try to magnify that in the rural areas where you have mileage, you have time, you have distances, and you have limited service in these rural areas. And we deal with a concentrated population of the transit-dependent of all backgrounds. And it's very important that we provide this service of the demand response real-time dispatching. The intercity routes coming in from the west side, starting in the city of Fireball to the far west, and Mr. Amador can correct me on the mileage, but approximately 38 to 40 miles just due west of here, Fireball, the cantaloupe capital of the world, comes into Fresno via Mendota, Kerman, into Fresno with several stops. We also have the Coalinga Transit, which is approximately 64 miles southwest of Fresno County, our furthest most point, and it has approximately 17 stops. And it has an inbound trip and also an outbound trip in the evening. And oftentimes people always, and we welcome the criticism, constructive or comments. Oftentimes people tell Janelle Del Campo and myself in meetings, say, you know what, you need to get your act together. It takes an hour and a half, 2 hours to come in from Coalinga to Fresno. I said, it does. I agree with you. What do you want me to do? Well, it needs to be faster service. I said, okay, go back to the map, Kendall, please. And we have 17 stops along the way from Coalinga to Fresno. Remember I mentioned 39 unincorporated communities? You tell me which ones you want me to eliminate, okay? And you know what? No response. We stop at 5 Points. We stop in Lanier. We stop in Riverdale. We stop in Carruthers. We stop in Easton. They're just outside of the sphere of influence of Fresno. How are we going to eliminate services and stops to those locations? I'm not going to do it. If anything, why not put in more bus shelters, expand the service, provide an express service? So these are the kind of challenges that we face, and I'm being very transparent and open with you. These are the challenges with the distance in rural areas, not taking away from the high density urbanized areas like Clovis and Fresno, but we're dealing with other factors that really add a layer of challenges and complications to our service. And we do this Monday through Friday and some service on Saturday. And we operate all of these routes with the idea to get individuals from their place of starting to a destination, and sometimes those destinations are several stops because we do have a rural transit service that is kind of a quasi microtransit that requires 24-hour advance reservation. If you recall, I mentioned to you that we have real-time dispatching with all those intracity routes, which is really important Because if you're a senior and you live in one of those cities, most seniors concentrate on one thing, and time is of importance. And where's my bus? It's 15 minutes away. It's 20 minutes away. So they're calling on the phone. So we have that real-time dispatching. But we have that rural demand system, quasi microtransit, where we serve the unincorporated communities for quality of life services, doctor's appointments, social service appointments, grocery store shopping. Many of these individuals do not go to the local stores because of the prices. So they want to come into another urbanized area for larger purchases. We had one individual, and I relate to stories. We had one individual from the city of Coalinga. She would come in probably every 2 weeks, and her stop was the Vallarta Market. Why? Because she could buy one box of groceries for $40, and in Coalinga, that same box of groceries would be $88 to $90. So there's some economic factors here that you have to take into account. And then I'm sure it's also applicable in the urbanized area, because we do have some smart shoppers and passengers who watch their dollars. The other important thing, and you've heard it from my colleagues, that we do not charge for the elderly, the disabled, or veterans within those intra-city routes. So those 13 incorporated cities do not have any fares for those individuals. We don't check their IDs. So we allow them to use the vehicle, the bus, as many times as possible. And a lot of them, that's their livelihood, is getting them out of their home so that they can stay homebound and not go to a facility. And it really makes a difference. Many of these cities have in-center meal programs that are very critical to their lifestyle. And we transport them to the meal sites as part of our social service activities, because they do have activities, not as big as Clovis, but these rural areas do provide those services Monday through Friday. And I can tell you during COVID, and it's a key point here, when everything shut down on March 18th of 2020, it changed everything. And it was very critical, because we were able to get a pass from FTA, Federal Transit Administration, and Caltrans. Instead of transporting individuals to the meal sites because they were closed, we were able to take meals from individual locations and take them to their homes. And that played a very critical role. And we couldn't have done it without the assistance of Measure C as part of our overall budget. And you can see through this line item here some of the other services that we are able to provide with the assistance of our Measure C funding. And it's not a matter of how much money you have, but it's what you do with that funding. And we try to be stewards of this funding so that we can allocate it appropriately. You've heard of the matching funds for grant programs. We do the same thing. But I want to highlight a couple of things that we do in the rural areas that are somewhat unique. We provide services to the colleges that normally would not be able to be provided as a form of school bus transportation, although it's public transportation. We have students we have two main college routes. One is called the Kingsburg to Reedley College route. It starts at the city of Kingsburg, south of Fresno on the Tulare County line, and it traverses through the city of Selma, Fowler, Parlier, and into Reedley. So we have that for all these college students in these cities that would not normally have that transportation. You're probably asking, why doesn't the college provide that transportation? Well, we've been doing it since 2014. There's another route that we also provide service for as well, and that's Sanger to Reedley College. And we provide daily service on both of these routes with an adjusted fare for the students who can afford it. And oftentimes the colleges help with that stipend as well. Bottom line is, Measure C goes away, those two routes are eliminated. How many people are impacted by that? The students, the cities, the accomplishments, the possible career abilities of these students that are going to be affected. And I share those with you because they're very critical. And we also provide school bus transportation within the intra-city routes. Again, City of Huron, Fireball, Mendota. The school districts are strapped for funding as everybody else is. But again, it's not how much money you make, it's what you do with it. We're able to augment our funding with other funding sources as well. And oftentimes we transport a lot of school-age children to the schools, and the parents depend on that because these small cities, they just don't have the means to do that. We also transport seniors to collective meal distribution sites. And I share with you these social aspects of public transportation because oftentimes that's overlooked by even us, and we take it for granted. And it's very critical because these are essential quality of life issues. Whether you're an urban dweller or a rural inhabitant out there, you need these type of services. And oftentimes, because Fresno County, and I'm going to reference a document, and if you need more information on it, I'm sure Kendall is well versed in it and she can give you the link, but it's called Cal Environ Screen 4.0. And essentially what this document does, it's provided by the state of California, and it classifies all the counties based on economic, health, other factors that are associated. Fresno probably ranks as one of the lowest ranking within the state of California. It's bad in the sense of that categorical classification, but the good part about it is we're able to use that Cal Environ Screen 4.0 to qualify for other grants that, as you heard earlier, talked about for buses, technology, software, different things like that, and it gives us an added value on it. The unfortunate thing about this is that these communities that I referenced, and you can see here by the fare box, thank you, Kendall's trying to keep me on track, and she told me I had, and she said I only had 3 minutes, so I'm trying to talk fast, so I apologize for that. But there's a lot of ground to cover in Fresno County, as you can see by the map. But we use the Measure C for the fare box requirement because, again, like my colleagues, we don't charge the elderly, the disabled, and the veterans. We believe that it's a benefit to them. And you can see by this chart, which I'm sure you all have the slides on this, and you can kind of take an in-depth look at this as to how this funding is used appropriately. Next slide, please. This gives you statistical data that is very important. And before I get into the numbers here, which obviously you folks can look at, you have copies of this presentation, and I'm not going to read them to you. But one of the things that's important for all of these three operators is that by keeping data and records, there's an accountability factor, there's a transparency factor, not just for Measure C, but for all our other funding sources like Federal Transit Administration, Fresno Council of Governments, who's also funds some of our activities. So we can go to any point in time by any one of you and say, okay, Moses, what does it cost to transport somebody in the city of Mendota? We can tell you that. What is the distance? They're called TDA indicators, Transportation Development Act indicators, and these are required by the state and federal government. There's also federal data banks that we have to submit this data. And regardless of who you fund, how much you fund, you have to be accountable to those funding sources for those numbers and the type of funding that you're using in overseeing that stewardship on that funding. So I just share with you that keep in mind the accountability factor and the transparency. If somebody comes to you, whether it's myself, Fax, or Clovis, how are you going to use that money and how are you going to report it? And FCTA, the administrator of the Measure C, requires these and also the audits so that we can reimburse. And that's really important in the whole scheme of everything that you're going to be looking at too, not just for us as transit operators, but for the public works, for the streets and roads and different things.
Moses, I have a quick question for you because it came up last week and I know they're going to ask. And I realize this is very small. I want to make sure everyone in the committee knows that the full size version of the PowerPoint is also available online. And I know we're all struggling to read it. When you look at total passengers for 2024 at 185,000 and change, is that the number of trips or the number of unique passengers?
Those are the number of passengers because oftentimes the trips are double that.
Okay.
For example, we get daily reports, and I can give you one daily report that I have here in front of me. And forgive me, it was this week sometime, but we had 680 trips. If you divide that by 2, we transported approximately 340 people. And The hours were approximately 2,800 to 3,000 miles for that day within the Fresno County. Again, you have to look at that sphere of influence of Fresno County and the two types of routes, the intercity routes that come in from the east and west part of Fresno. And I apologize, I only gave you the west side. We also have east side routes that come in from Orange Cove via Reedley, Parlier, Sanger into Fresno as well. And again, back to those intercity routes, those are important. Why? Because a lot of social services are here in the city of Fresno and also at the new Clovis site over there off of Peach and Dakota. And there are also no methadone clinics in the rural areas. They're all in Fresno. There's very few parole or probation offices. We serve everybody, the transit dependent. And we need to do that because if we don't provide that needed service to transit dependent, it's at all classification. There's no other services. Yes, there are more clinics cropping up out there, United Health Clinic, Adventist Healthcare, and some others, but we still need to bring them into the proper of Fresno and also Clovis. And I'm going to leave you with two stories real quick. So if you'll indulge my time, Kendall, I know I'm on borrowed time, but I'm going to leave you with these two stories. We had a gentleman from Trimmer Springs Road up above Sanger, a Vietnam veteran, and he is a patient of Veterans Hospital located at Clinton and Fresno Street. Vietnam vet being treated for cancer, and he needed to have chemo radiation treatment. His oncologist at the hospital referred him to his own clinic at Millbrook and Herndon, outside of the Veterans chain. The Veterans Administration would not cover that transportation to transport this veteran, okay, for this treatment. I made a phone call, but anyway, we transported this veteran. The trip for him was $10 a one-way trip, $5 inbound, $5 outbound. Typically, FCRTA does not transport medical because of the possible after effects of the treatment, whether it's, dialysis or others. We transported him. And it was one of those situations where we had to do the right thing because the quotes he got to get private transportation was $148 a one-way trip, inbound and outbound. Okay, that's criminal. And the VA hospital could not do that because it was outside their deal. The second story I'm going to share with you is when we started the Sanger route, Sanger to Reedley College, the other college route, there was a young lady, and I was out there just observing the route after 2 weeks of start in August when we started it in 2014. And I said, excuse me, would you mind if I asked you a few questions? I identified myself. I had my tie on and the coat and all that stuff and so forth. And I said, why do you take this bus? And she said, well, there's 7 people in our household and we have one car and my mother's the only driver of that car when it's running and we can afford the gas or the insurance. On her own, she said, then I don't have to buy a parking pass at Reedley, which I think at the time was $10 or $15 a semester. And she said, and I don't have to waste gas circling the parking lot to park. Wow, music to my ears, greenhouse gas reduction, all these good things, right? And I said, well, thank you. I appreciate that. And she goes, I wouldn't be able to go to college if I didn't have this. Right. Okay. So thank you. And I turned around, walked away, and she said, excuse me, old man, I have one more thing. I said, what's that? She said, after the semester, I will be able to buy another pair of shoes with the money that we saved from riding this bus to Reedley College because these are the only pair of shoes I have. This is an 18, 19-year-old young lady, okay? Now, if that's not transit dependent and what it does to the other parts of society and what we do and the difference that you make through being on this committee and Measure C, I don't know what else to tell you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Moses. I'm going to make a suggestion. I'm going to call it an executive decision. The next segment we're going to go into really has to do with microtransit. And the thing with microtransit, it's probably more likely to be a program. So I'm going to move that to our next month so we have some time to actually ask questions and perhaps give everyone just a moment to have a bathroom break if you need that. So if you're amenable to that, I'd say if anybody needs to have a break, maybe 5 minutes, we'll come back and open it up for questions with our panelists, if that's okay with everyone. Okay, so 5-minute warning. It's 4:15 now. Let's try to be back at 4:20 and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Okay, I'm not here next month. Okay, Robert said he'd do it, but I'm just letting you know that I'm
You're not going to just.
I'm not even bringing a laptop to dial in. Good luck. Let's see.
And then he's saying like we get just express services. Everybody needs that. Whatever.
Okay. Okay, folks, if we can go ahead and everybody come back in and have a seat, we'll go ahead and move on to questions, discussion. Okay, folks, I realize that's a tremendous amount of information. And I just want you to know, we're going to boil some of this down into, I would say, smaller bite-sized pieces. But kind of the hope was today, just for you to get an understanding at a broad stroke about, we have 3 transit services that are providing services. We've got a substantial population that is dependent, 100% dependent on them. And we know that they've been receiving a substantial chunk of the Measure C. At some point in this process in the coming months, you'll be having discussions about, is that the right amount? Should it be more? Should it be less? All these different things. Some of the members last week were asking questions about the ridership, and that was one of the things that Moses brought up this week. So we will be doing a little one-sheet fact sheet that we'll be sending out that has information that says the number of unique riders annually, the number of trips annually, all that kind of stuff, so you can really see what that comes out to. But what I'd like to do now is, since we have these wonderful folks that are here to share their knowledge, is open it up the floor to questions that people might have. And if any of them, Mark is jumping in right away. He was ready 1 hour ago. Mark, what is your question?
I actually have 2.
Oh, you have 2. Oh my, what a shocker.
One's kind of a short-term question and the other's a long-term question. A short-term question is, given what's going on at the federal level, what is your concern about ongoing federal funding, since they seem to be defunding things? Second is a long-term question, and that is, what do you foresee the impact of technology on the things you do? You know, one of the things, my daughter's studying robotics at Carnegie Mellon, and when you hear all about autonomous vehicles, and she's actually interning with a company this summer, how do you see that impacting what you do?
Why don't we start with Joe, and then Sandra, and I'm sorry, Susanna and Moses, if you want to add to it, that's perfectly fine. And don't forget to put down the microphone so we can hear you loud and clear.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah, is it green in front of you?
It is. So to your first question, actually, our director, Gregory Barfield, is actually in Sacramento today, or for the remainder of the week, at a legislative conference with the California Transit Association, and they're talking about the impact of potentially the decisions being made at the federal level with this new administration. Now, we've gotten notice recently. We got a letter from Secretary Duffy. I should probably know that, right? Really emphasizing support, the decisions we're making, if we don't want funds being cut of the administration. So again, DEI is a big thing. We think we're not in any jeopardy currently of losing any federal funding. Again, one of our major sources is Formula 5307, and we think that's pretty secure. Again, we don't look at necessarily transit, and I don't think many folks look at transit as a partisan. I think it's pretty bipartisan, knowing the population that we serve across the country. But again, at this point, obviously, we're keeping our eyes on it, keeping tabs on it. Greg's a part of a legislative committee that meets on a regular basis, that's regularly talking about some of the decisions being made and the impacts that it could have on our funding.
Can I follow up a little bit on that? I mean,
Sure.
How far they plan out? In other words, if this administration makes decisions, does it end when this administration leaves in 28, or does the decisions they're making now continue on to 2030 or something?
No, I think the transportation bill is annually. Is that an annual? It's annually. So I don't know if those decisions, maybe if they pass legislation that could potentially impact some of the programs that are out there, that could definitely have an impact on us, unless the next administration, depending on who gets voted in, changes that. But again, we're aware of a lot of decisions that are being made and cognizant that it could have a negative impact on us potentially. But at this point, again, we haven't seen anything. I don't know if Moses probably is in tune with a lot more than I am in my position.
Not really, but I just want to let you know that that's a very good question, Mark. And, we're just subject to the whims of whatever the politics are in Washington, D.C. And we live in California, so you can read between the lines. We're considered a blue state. So depending on what the higher level politics are, it's almost guilt by association, which could be. And I'm just letting you know just kind of the talking points that are among transit operators. But Joe illustrated it very well. The apportionments are based on state populations and whatever the funding is for this particular state, and they're allocated by the counties. And FCOG gets an apportionment that is allocated and it's distributed to the rural, urban areas and so forth. Those are pretty much set in place, but discretionary funding and grants could be affected, again, depending on guilt by association or innocence by association as well, if you will. And on your question on robotics and technology, we've all had discussions on that. You heard about the electric buses. We also have electric buses. You heard about Susanna talk about the automated dispatch system and dispatching that they've recently implemented. The challenge with the technology, whether it's robotics, AI, or anything else, is it's changing daily. We have technology that is already outdated. FCRTA's purchased 4 or 5 different type of vehicles because we don't know which one was going to last. 2 of those 5 vendors are already out of business. The chargers are impacted, the software. If a electric vehicle, for example, gets an update on the battery, they have to update the charger. Then it can't talk to each other. Right now, we're waiting for electronics for a charger because we have an inductive charger and the supply chain is in effect. And depending on what country it originated from, it impacts us. So fortunately, I have a board, the 13 mayors that are behind you and the board of supervisors. I've had several board members say, you know what, you need a backup plan. Still keep 1 or 2 fossil fuel vehicles in the event that the electric vehicles go down. So you have to have backup plans. We're building a maintenance facility in Selma with Measure C funding, a nice facility. We're using solar. We're using battery energy systems. We're using everything available to primarily support the system with a backup and a gas generator when right now utility companies are eliminating gas. So it's a changing evolution daily and weekly.
Let me add one thing up there. I'm sorry, the engineering industry has been following a lot of the legislation, and just to let everybody know, the think is at this point, the Biden infrastructure bill had a 10-year window. It was never going to be forever, right? And so the question right now is that it's been held up in Congress actually releasing some of those grant funds. That's affected not just places in Fresno, but all over California. There's litigation currently in place. One of the federal judges has already ruled in favor of the plaintiffs, which is to release the funds. We're convinced it's going to go on and on and on because they don't have Mark in there to facilitate that discussion. But the reality is, in transportation grant funding for the last 3 decades, right? This goes in ebbs and flows. It goes in ebbs and flows. So you got to think about this in the long term, right? In the 30-year horizon, that's what we should be looking at, in the 50-year horizon, and try not to get too concerned about who's in the White House right now, because we've seen Republican and Democratic administrations come in and go out, and they're going to continue unless something really bad happens. But to answer your question, in the short term, the industry is believing that what's in place will remain for some time. The big difference is, as I think as Joe mentioned, using DEI, equity, and environmental concerns, specifically equity, in applications for grants on the federal level that has been scrubbed for most of their programs. So we're all getting very creative about what that does in terms of, access to jobs. There are other ways that we can do that. And at this point, every agency is sort of playing the wordsmith game to kind of get through that. It does not diminish the need for Measure C funds to apply for those grants at the state and federal level.
Just a real quick point. I remember we were talking about just a number of years ago. We had received money to buy electric buses for the Parlier School District and to give them new buses. And isn't this great? They said, no, thank you. I'm like, what? We're giving you new buses. The reason was the mechanics didn't know how to fix them, so they didn't want them. So one of the things you might be thinking about is not just, when you're doing this, not just, okay, give them electric buses, but can they actually use them? So maybe think a little broader than that. Do we need to train their people to be able to fix those buses? So it's a little more broad than just buying a bus.
Great. Other questions from committee? Go ahead.
No question.
Lee's got a question.
I'm so sorry.
And that's okay. And then we'll go to you right afterwards, Joe.
Yeah, it goes deeper than that because the technology that was used and was current at that time may be stale now, and they upgrade the technology. Doesn't apply. I have a question for Joe regarding the advantages of the hydrogen vehicle, and then just a general question for those that it applies to. I've heard that the ridership requirement count was no longer enforced during the pandemic. Has that been restored or not?
Oh, the fare box for TDA? No, that's currently continued to, it's still suspended. Again, they're having a lot of discussion at the state level on what those metrics they're going to hold us to will look like in the future. In terms of hydrogen, again, we have 2 hydrogen buses. We started off with 9 battery electric buses, as part of this whole California CARB ICT regulation. Those have had a lot of struggles. We have 8 of the 9 battery electric buses that are currently out of commission, and we don't see in the foreseeable future getting those back in line. On hydrogen, that to me and to our department is a little more proven technology. A lot of the larger agencies like AC Transit has been using them for years. Sunline Transit has been using those for quite some time. The advantage of the hydrogen is really about the range. It almost functions a little bit or operates similar to our compressed natural gas buses, which we've been operating for, over probably since I've been with the department a couple of decades. But again, hydrogen, the biggest challenge with transitioning to hydrogen is the fuel. Currently, to fuel those 2 buses, we have a partnership with H2B2 in Kerman, sorry, in Kerman. But logistically, to get them fueled every night is a nightmare. So again, we're slowly transitioning and looking to transition our fleet to hydrogen. until the battery electric technology improves and is more reliable. But again, we're looking at different partnerships. We're looking at building our own hydrogen facility. We've partnered with the state in the Arches program to try and do a build out that could be beneficial to the community, along with if the city transitions some of its fleet to hydrogen. But for sure, you know, with 138 buses, we can't rely on driving 45 minutes to fuel the fleet and make service every day.
Well, there's issues, safety issues with both. Hydrogen, you have pressurized fuel, correct? But that's the initial risk. With regard to electric, is my understanding, battery fires, smoke, etc., very toxic. Even fire departments have to ship out their protective gear so it can be decontaminated. They can't do it on site or within their department. That's my understanding. So there's risk with both.
Yeah, I mean, on hydrogen, in terms of like preparing our maintenance staff, you know, to getting them well trained, getting the facility updated to be able to work on those vehicles safely. We're going through that phase right now. The electric, luckily we've never experienced any major emergency with those vehicles, and we haven't done that. We haven't experienced anything with the hydrogen buses, but again, we're very limited in how much we operate those vehicles because of the fueling. But again, we're aware of the I guess potential risks of that technology. But again, we're doing everything we can to make sure that the public and our teams stay safe and not only using those vehicles, riding those vehicles, but also maintaining those vehicles. And I'm not sure if Moses, you have anything on.
Okay. Joe?
Thank you. You know, it's an honor to be here with you folks. I served, but first of all, I'd like to acknowledge Kerman. I mean, this is impressive. When you have a youth attending these meetings. I started my law enforcement career at the age of 16 in Mendota, California as a cadet. And I thank Fireball for sending me to the academy in 1975 and paid my way through the academy. But we need to have our youth here sitting next to us, shadowing us. I heard his career may be political science. We developed some of the best politicians in Western Fresno County. Our Lieutenant Governor, Cruz Bustamante, he graduated from high school with me. John Navarrete, our county administrator, he graduated from Tranquility High School with me. But again, we have to all be on the same page of what we need and what we want. It doesn't matter who's up in Washington, D.C. We were there because I'm a board member on United Health Centers. We were there in February lobbying for some monies. Both parties, they did, Democrat or Republican, did not know what's going to happen. And I don't know if they still know what's going to happen. But we have to unite and work to serve these communities. And the reason I know the majority of Fresno County roads, and I was a homicide detective for 17 years of my career with Fresno County. So I know the rural areas. I know the areas. South Dos Palos is part of Fresno County. Biola, Three Rocks, Cantua. You think we're left out? Think about those folks that live out there. But again, I'm here to serve, and whatever I can do, I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Did you have a question for any of our panelists today?
Not today,
Okay.
but maybe in the near future I will.
I'm sure there's going to be plenty of questions as we go through this further on. Does anybody else have any questions today for the panel? Okay. Oh, yep. Go right ahead, Greg. Is it Greg? No, I'm sorry. I can hardly see it.
Greg.
It is Greg. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought that because my brother's name, so I was hoping that was my key. Okay.
I have a couple of questions for the FCRTA. I represent the city of Selma. I'm a member of the Planning Commission, the city. But I have a day job as a teacher. And you mentioned that there were routes that transport students from the rural areas to Reedley College. Are there any other colleges or universities that are being supported or with transportation routes?
Yeah, great question. We recently started a route from the city of Kerman into Fresno City College. And we were able to do that with the matching funds of Measure C. We started that this last year. And we have another route from Huron to Coalinga for the Coalinga College. And then the other two routes that I mentioned earlier, the Sanger to Reedley College, and also the Kingsburg to Reedley College from Kingsburg, serving the corridor along that area. The other school children that we talked about, that I referenced, were primarily some of these school districts, for example, the Huron. They have pretty much zero budget for transportation. So a lot of the children get on our vehicles because they don't ride for free, but the fare is 35 cents. What can you buy for 35 cents these days? And oftentimes the drivers pay their fares. Sometimes based on the conditions in some of these rural cities, that may be the safest way to transport these children to and from the schools too, mainly elementary and middle schools. That's a very good question.
So a student who would be attending Fresno City College or Fresno State from these rural areas, would they be able to directly transfer from your service to FACS?
They would. They'd come into Courthouse Park or another location, and they would transfer on to Fresno Area Express. All the buses pretty much come here to Courthouse Park right across the street, so they would transfer there. The only direct connection that we have currently to City College is from that Kerman route that we started last year.
Okay, and my second question was, has your organization done any outreach to the high schools that you service? Because I haven't heard of anything at Selma High School.
No, we have not.
Okay.
Our outreach has been pretty much limited to the senior centers, some of the other locations that the general public goes to and from.
Okay.
But the schools have not. We've done some pop-up events where we've gone to some of the open houses and events that they've had, and we've had staff there or our subcontractor, MV Transit, show up with flyers and different things like that that we've been invited to offer that service.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, are there any other questions? Yes, go right ahead, Wendy. Don't forget to put your microphone on.
In reference to the veteran that you were speaking about.
Can you speak a little closer to the microphone? So we
I
can
was
hear
just
you?
wondering, the veteran that you were speaking about, you were mentioning that you're not able to provide services based on like discretionary, based on his medical needs.
That's correct. There are three areas that the Caltrans and FTA pretty much frowns upon, meaning for public transit agencies, kind of restrictions, guardrails, guidelines, and different agencies interpret them differently. One of them is medical transportation. So if somebody breaks an arm up at Yokuts Valley, calls us, which they have, I need to go down to the clinic to get, we can't do that, okay? That's more of an emergency type thing. The second one is charter service. So if your organization or business calls on us to transport your business activity, we can't do that because those are public funds. And the third one is school transportation. We cannot actually do school transportation for the younger grades. I reference school transportation because they're college routes, so those really don't apply. But for school transportation, there's called what's a general public paratransit vehicle certification, where you can transport school-age children, but not directly in front, drop off and pick up in front of the schools. So again, there are regulations. But for that veteran, it was one of those situations where we would rather ask for forgiveness than permission. And it was just yes, it was a very sad situation.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Yes, go ahead, Chuck.
It was brought up earlier that Parlier said that thank you for, or no thank you for the school buses because the mechanics needed the training. Being that I'm from Coalinga and I used to work at the bus garage years ago, can the Measure C funding be used for training the mechanics to work on those buses?
if it's in a program that's for transit, I would say yes.
Right, because they do have
Yeah.
the Measure C buses in their fleet right now.
And I would also say that, because just full disclosure, DCAS, we're transitioning a number of school districts to electric buses. And they also do, by the way, keep a couple of the hydrogen or other ones around as well. But, you know, as the technology evolves and frankly, this training for the schools and whatnot to get people up to it, that evolves too. So it is constantly in flux. Did you want to add something to that,
Yeah,
Moses?
just to add to your point, very good question. Currently, Measure C funds Fresno City College at the West Campus for a program specifically for technology and electric vehicle training and solar are those two classes that are being offered there in the West Fresno campus. I believe it's an approximate $3+ million grant that they've received to hire teachers and enroll students to that career option. We're completing a facility in Selma, and we're going to be coordinating with the high school and the colleges, junior colleges, to offer that site as a training facility because it's a very unique one. And then I'll offer a tour to your committee at some point in time when you folks have some free time to come out and visit the facility. Okay?
Is that something I can contact you about later?
Yeah, not a problem.
Okay.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think also it's important when we talk next month, we'll be talking about programs as well. And so technology use it. Those are the kind of things that would be possible, you know, as a one-off that people could apply for. So any one of the 3 transit agencies could apply for that, or a college. Other questions? Yes, go ahead.
I had a question about the outreach that you've done for people that do take their Reedley College route. Has there been any outreach to those students?
There's been, excuse me, there's been extensive outreach. We work on a collaborative basis with the Reedley College where they notify all the students, incoming freshmen, and when they have the orientation annually, transportation is one of those topics, and they do provide that information on the route, the schedule. It's even on our website, ruraltransit.org, for both the Sanger route and also the Kingsburg to Reedley College route. And they also provide surveys to all the students incoming to the college as well.
Is there information provided inside the bus when you're on it? Like, it's a
No.
perfect opportunity to get that information out. For
You know,
kids.
we could do that, but pretty much the students have their phones, their apps, and they're pretty knowledgeable about it. And one thing about the rural area is the fact that everybody talks to everybody, and they know where the stops are, who the drivers are, the good ones and the bad ones. And you know, if the driver's late, the vehicle breaks down, because they do that. Word of mouth travels real quick, and I get a lot of phone calls. Janelle gets a lot of phone calls. So we're in constant communication. Also, the college offers bus passes to these students too at a discounted rate, which makes it very affordable and accessible to the students as well.
Wonderful. Thanks. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, are there any other questions? Go ahead.
I kind of have a question for just all 3 of the organizations, FACS, FC, RTA, and Clovis Transit. Fuerza, we work with farm workers and we look out for farm workers for their problems and their safety. Just to get some information from you guys, what do you guys do in terms of transportation of farm workers?
That's a very good question. I mentioned earlier in the presentation, a lot of information. We have that rural transit project, rural transit micro transit, where we offer transportation to the unincorporated communities. There's 39 of them. Cantua Creek, El Porvenir, 3 Rocks, Tranquility. How many of you folks have heard of Tombstone? Everybody know where Tombstone is? Not the last place you'll be in, but it's right outside of Sanger. There's a lot of communities out there that we provide this rural transportation, and oftentimes some of the families that live there, Biola, are farm worker families. And it's not just the farm workers. There's a lot of light industry out there too. Factory work, light industrial that people need working in the, you know, cantaloupe, the cold storages and different things like that. So they oftentimes will do that, call in for transportation or to get supportive services. I mentioned those meal deliveries when they have the food distributions. Our drivers will take a lot of these families to that distribution site and even help them with the boxes for the food for that family because they're serving those low-income farm worker communities.
I think that one of the things you were asked about, 'cause there's a separate program, which we're going to talk about next
Oh,
month.
that's different. Yeah.
And that is different. And that's called Calvans. And so with that, they'll take and pick up farm workers within their home communities, take them to farms. But it could also be to packing facilities, manufacturing facilities, bunny. So there's a whole thing. Fun fact, I learned when I was speaking at Huron, that program started here in Fresno County in the city of Huron. And then it has been expanded upon since then. So that is one of the things that is funded by Measure C through a program. So we're going to talk about that and those kind of things when we meet next month. Okay. Yep. Go ahead, Mark.
I was wondering if each of the agencies could just let me know kind of the breakdown in cost by percentage basis. What percentages are of your overall operating budget are for labor costs? What percentages for administration? What percentage for, maintaining the buses, the mechanical part? Can you give me a general idea for each of your organizations?
And let me say this because that may take some math. So what I would say, if you're okay with it, is we can ask them to produce just a cover memo that we can provide to everyone. Because I think that was the other thing that people are going to want to know in the basics is ridership, unique ridership, and as Mark said, cost of delivery of service, both in terms of maintenance, staff, and I would say administration. Does that make sense?
Yeah. The percentage breakdown I think might be helpful just to see.
Okay.
Thanks.
See, I owe me one, you guys. Just saying. Okay. All right. Are there any other questions before I'm trying really hard to keep us, I want you to have enough time to talk about whatever you want, but I also want to be respectful of what we told you, which is 2 hours. Go ahead, Wendy.
This question is for Susanna. Do you have a number for, I didn't catch that, for the Landmark Square Center? Did you have how much money was allocated for that? Oh, sorry.
I couldn't see the screen, but yes. So that was for the Landmark, how much was allocated. It was a total between, there was the transit building, which was 250,000, and then 300,000 for the bus shelter for a total of 550. But our cost for the actual project was a little over $6 million. So it provided about 10%.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, what you're seeing on the screen right now, while you're going to all go home and have a lovely month, our team is going to be busy, and I want to share with you just some dates. Again, if you go to measurec2026.com, obviously we're here today. Next week, staff is going to be meeting with the representatives from all the cities for a technical advisory committee. They'll be joining us just as like folks did today at some of the future meetings to help answer some questions. I'll be in Coalinga with you, Chuck, on the 15th. That's for their city council meeting, Fowler on the 20th, Fresno on the 22nd. But the thing I really want to draw your attention to is the city of Reedley and the city of Kingsburg will be having the first of our community meetings. And I highly encourage those of you that can come join us. But at the very least, I can't emphasize enough the importance of sharing the information about this on your social media with friends, family, other people, because it's really important to have a good turnout. One of the things and tools we'll be using there is sort of interactive click polling where people can sort of allocate where they'd like to see funds going. Again, we want to reiterate there is no plan in place. We're asking people to tell us what they want to spend the money on, and then we're bringing that information back to you pretty much every meeting moving forward from there. The other part is that we'll be making a presentation of the Fresno COG on the 29th. We'll also be updating them on, I think some of you know there's a concurrent effort with Transportation for All. And so they're also trying to figure out what people want. We're going to be chatting with some of their folks later today to kind of figure out where we can maybe meet in the middle. So we're optimistic about that. And again, our next meeting here on June 12th, let's just make sure they're in. We also have Firebaugh City Council on the 2nd, San Joaquin on the 3rd, Kingsburg on the 4th. And I don't know if those numbers are right now that I'm looking at it, because I think we might have moved those for graduations. But nonetheless, our next steering committee meeting will be the 12th. And so if you have any questions about that meeting, again, we're going to be focusing on the bike and pedestrian opportunities, looking at the regional, they call it active transportation plan, what kind of trails and things are out there. We're also going to be talking about programs, much like the Calvans program, senior script, those sort of things. So if you have questions about that, we'll try to answer as many as we can. And then we will be moving on from there to the local roads, which I anticipate to be one of the more exciting conversations. And at that point, we'll be talking about pavement condition, and we'll be talking about the cost of maintaining the pavement that we have, that sort of good stuff. I know a lot of folks are thinking about that. And again, 14th of August will be regional needs. And then we'll talk citizens oversight. And this is all going towards that October, November timeframe where we're at that point, we're going to hopefully have some good times putting things there. Don't laugh out loud, Mark. Good times. Good time. Not as much fun as I had last night with the fire alarm going off, but still a good time. Again, I want to thank everybody. I didn't even get a chance. Kristen, do you have any questions online? Did you have anything you wanted to pop in? You've been lovely to stay with us.
Hi, no, I don't have any questions. It was really great to sit in and I learned so much. And I took a lot of notes for Darren, and I'm hoping that I can continue to be involved and I'll attend future meetings as well.
Well, remember, you can always, if you're not the alternate that week, you can always listen in. And again, I encourage everybody, which I've said repeatedly, share. One of the reasons you're all here is to share within your local communities. I'm available to answer any questions or anything like that. And before I forget, I promised Chuck that I would have a form for him to fill out, and I apologize, I did not bring it with me. But for those of you that would like to take advantage of it, we will reimburse either transportation, like if you took the bus, or mileage. It'll be based on the federal piece. So all you have to do is let us know how many miles you did to and from. You'll be giving that actually to me at DKS, and we will reimburse that back to you. So I will send something out for all of you guys about how to calculate that, but it's based on the federal, I forget what it is right now, 54 cents a mile or something like that. I'm not really sure. But yes, go ahead, Gail.
So you're going to be meeting with Transportation for All, you said? There's been several articles that came out just recently.
Yep.
And on their website, they have a no on Measure C symbol.
Well, that was that's the old Measure C.
Is that old?
That's the old Measure
I'm
C.
glad you,
Yeah, to be fair, I mean, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I've met with several folks from their group, and they have been very clear about they also want to see a Measure C. I think everybody wants to see Measure C. The question is, at the end of the day, how do we get there? So what I want you guys all to know, this group, we're going to continue on our path. As far as I know, that's what we're going to do. But I don't want you to not take advantage of other opportunities. And it's just, I've told them, please come to our meetings. You know, the more people we have engaged, the more conversations we have, the better off we all are. So I don't want anyone to think it's an us and them situation, because it shouldn't be. We should all be thinking about the better good for Fresno County and the region as a whole. So I hope you carry that message with you. And that was from the old one, because there is no Measure C right now to oppose.
Good. I'm really glad you clarified that,
Yeah, no,
because
thank you for asking that
a
question.
little upsetting. And yeah, I'm going to try to go to their meetings and kind of see what's going on.
We're attending as well. So
yeah, and you're going to have to. So yeah, if it ends up with 2, it's a disservice to the community. It's not fair, and it shouldn't happen. It just shouldn't happen.
Well, I mentioned that because we were having a discussion on that topic at the board meeting on the 28th. So thank you all for being with us again today. I hope you had a little bit of fun, and I look forward to seeing you next month. Okay, have a great one. Now, let me turn this off first. Stop recording. Oops.